All right, welcome back. This is the homework video on agribusiness. So now we're going to shift gears and look at modern day agriculture. We've looked at all the different types of agriculture. We've looked at where farms are placed. We have looked at how farms are divided. We have looked at how possibilism helps us have more farms. We've looked at all the different agricultural revolutions. So now we are focusing on, today. So what is agribusiness? Agribusiness or commercial agriculture. When we're talking about commercial agriculture, how the heck do all these farmers simply grow food and get it to the supermarket? Are farmers growing this food, harvesting the food, making the food, packaging the food, shipping the food, sending it all around the world, stocking it in No. Farmers are one small step in this big idea of making sure that you get food on your table every day. And it comes from agribusiness. Agribusiness are businesses which surround and support large-scale agriculture. From the people that make the fertilizer, to the seeds, to the food processors, to the producers, to the packagers, to the shipping companies, all of them play a role in agriculture. Now, because of that, there are some impacts from agribusiness, and the fact that agribusiness is really the one that decides what we eat, what's on the market. It's not the farmers, because farmers can grow or raise any type of animal and they can get it out to the market. But if agribusiness doesn't support that type of agriculture, it'll never happen. So what we see in our supermarkets is a result of what agribusiness deems good enough to sell and make a profit off of. So agribusiness can get in the way of getting new foods and new crops, because agribusiness is going to support, agribusiness is these big companies that are going to keep producing crops that they know sell and make them money, and they're not going to support maybe some different types of agriculture, let's say like bison or rabbit farms, which are harder to breed, harder to raise, harder to process, and all of these things compared to, chickens or turkeys or cows, which we're so used to. Another impact of agribusiness is that we're seeing this shift towards corporate farming. Now, corporate farming, due to modern transportation and agribusiness, corporate farms are becoming more common. What the heck are corporate farms? Well, what it is big corporations, big companies will go to the rural countryside and buy up tons of farms, right? And essentially they make one giant farm, or they now own those individual farms and have those farms producing their food. For example, Tyson Chicken is notorious for this one. They'll go to small farms in the countryside in rural America, and they'll tell those people like, hey, we'll provide you with the structures for the chickens, we'll provide you the seed for the chicken, the food for the chicken, the equipment for the chickens, we'll provide you the chickens. You just got to raise them, count them, make it happen, right? So that means, though, that increasingly our food is being produced by large corporations away from our homes, shipped to us. There was a time where we used to get our food from farms, or farms would work with local markets and sell their stuff. And that still happens today. But as these corporations keep buying more and more farms, they are raising or growing their food, sending it off to their shipping or packaging companies or packaging facilities, and then shipping it to us. Now, farms are only part of agribusiness, as I mentioned earlier. To make sure that you get food on the table, it's a lot more than the farmer just growing or raising cattle, right? It's called the supply chain or commodity chain. It takes a lot to get food to you, and this is just a very simple broken down thing, but using it in the aspect of corn, because we know that corn is in absolutely everything. We're talking about the planting of it, using seeds, fertilizer, water, talking about growing it, harvesting it, processing it, marketing it, selling it, shipping it, all that stuff. And due to globalization, transportation technology, agricultural technology, distance decay not being a thing, all of this stuff, we're making sure that we can grow food in one part of the world and then ship it all around the world to wherever we need to. This is why we can have avocados year-round, right? Avocados are supposed to be a seasonal food, but we have them year-round because of supply chains, because of agribusiness, because of globalization. Strawberries, blueberries, very seasonal fruits that we get year-round because of globalization. So one of the important technologies to this globalization of food, is the freezer trucks or the refrigerated trucks, right? Or they're called cool chains. It's refrigerated transportation to reach global markets. And if you look, we have it on the back of trucks. We have it, the cargo, the shipping containers that go on the back of boats, which we're going to talk a lot about shipping containers. And then if you look on the bottom, we see frozen shipping containers, smaller ones that fit into a plane. So we're talking about, these fruits and vegetables, these cash crops. We've talked about these plantations, because this is the stuff that really does go around the global market when we're talking about these cool chains, when we're talking about the globalization of food. We're really talking about stuff that we can't live without, that aren't staples: bananas, avocados, strawberries, coffee, chocolate, pineapples, like all this great stuff that only grows part of the year. Thanks to cool chains and globalization, we get that year round. Now, the word down at the bottom, vertical integration, what that is, so there's horizontal integration and vertical integration. Vertical integration means a company owns every single step of that supply chain or that process from start to finish. And a lot of these agricultural companies will do that. They will be the ones that have the resources for the people, have people growing those things or raising those animals. And then there will be the same people to come collect the good, package the good, ship the good, and sell the good. So what are the problems with global agribusiness, though? Because it seems great that we can get the things that we love anytime we want. Well, there's a couple issues. The first one, farmers who are producing crops can't afford to consume what they grow. Think back to the chocolate farmers that we first saw at the very beginning of agriculture. People have grown cacao beans their entire life and had no idea what it was being made into. The second issue is that farmers focus on exporting crops and not growing crops for local consumption. This drives up the prices of staple crops and requires the importation of food and creates this thing called a monoculture. It's the idea that these developing nations, they go, well, I could grow corn, I could grow potatoes, I could grow yams, I could grow these staple crops that could keep my civilization, my society going. But I need to make more money. So instead of having that, I'm going to grow things like coffee, mustard seed, avocados, banana, cacao. And that way I can make some money. But the problem is now all that farmland, you're using it to make cash crops, and probably one cash crop. So now you have to import staple foods, which ultimately lead to a restricted diet because now you can only afford to buy a couple types of food. What also is a problem with monoculture is that if a disease or something affects your crops, it's going to affect all of them and wipe them out and effectively ruin this person's entire life or this farmer's life. And finally, farmers have to push their land for more product to survive, and it's unsustainable. Guys, cash crops are generally very hungry for nutrients, and they can drain the soil of nutrients and eventually make them barren. We saw an example of this when we looked at the effects of colonialism on Haiti, right? The French used that island for cash crops and stripped it with tobacco and sugarcane, and it depleted all the soil, and now they don't have anything to work with. And we're seeing the same things around the world because of global agribusiness. So what do you need to know today? First, you got to know what agribusiness is. Then you got to know how agribusiness supports new agriculture or could stop new agriculture. And then finally, how has corporate farming, globalization, and supply chains changed what we eat every day? If you have any questions, make sure to write them down in your notebook or highlight whatever you need to talk to me about, and we'll cover it in class.